Hello. Hi. Okay, so I guess
Oh,
we're going to start. Are you okay? Becky?
yeah, so your internet connection is unstable.
Oh no. Oh no, Rebecca Reeve.
Let me open.
Okay, so hello everybody. I think we're gonna be starting in just a moment. So while Rebecca is
It's
sorting out
really slow.
the magic that's internet, Rebecca, do you need to move, my love?
I don't know. I don't know if it's me or if it's you.
It's definitely not me, my love.
Let's keep talking for a little bit and see. I'm all set up here now.
Okay, so let's start. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the wonder of the internet. Welcome to AIRIE Asks. This is the second in the series, a digital online connective series that we started here at AIRIE to stay connected to our fellows and to our audience and to our supporters. My name is Helen Tuma. I am the Executive Director of AIRIE. And before we get started, I would very much like to thank our partners, specifically the Everglades National Park. We love you. Without you, we could not be. And also our fabulous board of epic people. And I'm going to give a shout out to Valerie Ricordi, who is our board president, and Rebecca, she's a huge fan of yours. So I'm excited for a couple of questions from Valerie. So we're going to get started. Rebecca, you were an artist in residence at AIRIE in 2012, and I would love for you, because I'm sure a lot of the people here already know about your practice, but I'd love for you just to tell us a little bit about your practice and about you.
Okay, so I trained as a painter and did photography as well, and then gradually moved more into photography. But my practice now, the end result really is a photograph, but it's site-specific work. It's performative, it's sculptural. It incorporates elements of painting too. So that is where I'm at this point. Who knows? Actually, I've just started this other work, haven't I? That's on the wall here. That's using, I guess they are sculptural wall pieces. So multidisciplinary practice, yes.
I realized I was on mute. This is very well today, technical difficulties aside. I was saying I love multidisciplinary. We don't want to put anybody in a box. That's good. Okay, you and me, we're going to get on the technological page. It's going to go seamlessly. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us. It's going to be good, I promise. So, Rebecca, Becky, as I know you, tell me about your residency. I mean, it was in 2012, but I know through the conversations that we've had over the years that it was instrumental in your practice. So
yeah. So the work that I started, it was December, I guess December 2012 into the early part of 2013. I think it was a week into that, or 2 weeks, but a while ago. And up until that point, I'd been working in black and white, and I'd been making a lot of work in Cuba. I'd been going there every year or several times a year for about 10 years. And then I got the residency at the Everglades. And it was a huge shift, because from working in black and white, I started to work in color. And I started to make very, very different work, solely landscape work, which I hadn't, when I was a painter, I did a lot of, it was landscape referenced, really large format paintings, but I hadn't been photographing the landscape in this way. And so it was really, really formative in my practice to do this, really significant to do this residency at the Everglades. So I'm forever thankful for it, yeah.
Oh, we love that. And I also should say, because I forgot to say this, but if anybody has any questions for Rebecca, please jot them down in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and we can ask ask her afterwards. So I love hearing that about the Everglades and the magic and
everything has sprung from that.
Oh, so
Well,
I love that. So do you want to tell us, do you want to start your presentation and talk a little bit about Marjorie's world and how that started in the Everglades and who that references?
yeah, I've put together a little slide presentation for us all, touching on all of the series that I've made. I don't know how long it's going to take, so you'll just like keep me on that. And so I'll start. Let's share. Oh, host disabled attendee screen sharing. Tommy! Hang on, guys.
Don't worry. Again, this is just carrying on the theme of technical issues today,
yeah.
and Tommy, magical Tommy will fix it. Also, I should probably explain to people a little bit about how we know each other, Becky, because we have known each other for now, and it's not just because we're British, although we did kind of meet because of that. But Rebecca was also an artist in residence at Stoneleaf Retreat, which is a residency that I run here in upstate New York. So I've been extremely fortunate to see Becky's work firsthand and talk about it over the years. Okay, are you ready?
Now I'm going to give it a go.
Perfect.
Hang on. Let's do this, baby.
Yay!
Hang on. I have to do it. Oh, I can't. Yeah.
You've got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, talk us through it. Okay, first of all, for those who don't know, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people in the room who know, who is Marjorie?
This Marjorie. This is Marge, who is the namesake of the series. And I love that little quote that I found. All we need really is a change from a near frigid to a tropical attitude of mind. The Everglades is a test. If we pass it, we may get to keep the planet. So Marjorie was a staunch advocate of the Everglades. She died at the ripe old age of 108 in 1998. And she fought against the efforts to drain the Everglades and to turn it into development, to develop it. And this book was released in 1947 and the Everglades was made a national park, I'm pretty sure, in 1947. And so this was the inspiration for the title. And this is a map of the Everglades. It's actually the very same map that I used to chart my course during my residency. So you will see the red route there. I haven't got the mouse active, I don't think, but oh, I do. So there, this red route is the route that I would take in different sections, you know, over that month period. And it's actually from Long Pine Key, or like Royal Palm there, down to Flamingo is 40 miles. So it's quite a distance. Actually, the Everglades National Park is the third largest park in the country after Yellowstone and Death Valley. And it's the largest tropical wilderness. It comprises 1.5 million acres. And so all of my pictures, I mean, it's a lot of land to cover. So I just narrowed it down to those points. So I would go along there every day. And this was actually me en route. All of the pictures are made along the sides, pretty much of the road, just because the nature of the work. You know, I've got a car with lots of gear, and it has to be carried around, and the landscape has to be accessible. So, so these side areas were where I made the work. And this actually is the very first picture that I made in the series. Yeah, and so we drove out before the sun came up, and I had this idea in my mind, you know, how I wanted to make the picture, but I didn't really know how it was going to look, and I didn't really know if it would work. And so we were waiting for the sun to come up, everything was set up, and then the sun came up and all of that grass just turned to gold. And it was really one of those, you know, defining moments where it was an aha moment, and I thought, wow, it's really beautiful to stand in front of these you know, these setups and make the pictures. It's such a pleasure to make the work, and it's very moving. And so yeah, so this was a defining moment in my practice.
Wow, Becky, I've never seen that one before. It's like,
You know,
I know, it's so gorgeous.
you can see the sun coming up on there.
I love it because Dara Friedman on the last AIRIE Asks talked about the sun
I
rising.
know she did.
Sunset.
Yeah, I know. And
Yeah.
you know, that's really the case in terms of, and I noticed that, you know, I did another residency in Joshua Tree National Park a few years after that, and I've noticed, you know, you get into this rhythm. It's like, you know, the circadian rhythm. You're very much living by the light. For me, as you know, as working with the light. I mean, I worked at night as well, but you know, just like charting, getting that golden hour in the morning, you know, in the evening, and watching how the sun is, because you just chart the landscape very much, and so you're very aware of the sun's position throughout the day in the sky there. Yeah. I really enjoyed Dara's talk, actually. I'm referencing her a bit in this too. So I should say that, sorry guys. So I should say that one of the challenges, like one of the stipulation for the residency then, I don't know if it's the case now, is that you had to make work about the landscape. And so it was a real challenge to think about how I was going to make an interesting picture of a topography that's so flat. Like the maximum elevation anywhere in the Everglades is, I think, 0.8 feet, 8 feet, like 0.8 meters. It's very flat. And so how do you make an interesting picture of something that's so flat? And just before I did this residency, I was watching a documentary that was released in 2012 by a British director, Grant Gee, called Patience After Siebold. And that was a documentary that was based, or source based, a German writer who was living in the UK. He died very early, but he wrote W.G. Siebold, and he wrote a book called The Rings of Saturn. And I was watching that documentary about that. A lot of artists draw reference from that. And in part of it, they were talking about a ritual in 1600s Holland, whereby when the body, when someone died, the body was laid out in a person's home. And what they would do, it's customary to cover all of in the room, maybe in the house too, but certainly in the room, cover all of the mirrors, all of the portrait paintings and the landscape paintings with cloth, so that when the idea was that when the soul left the body, it wasn't tempted to stay in this world. And I thought that it was such a beautiful notion, and this idea of the landscape and the spirit wanting to stay in the landscape. And I think it was really this idea, this ritual, that gave birth to using, instead of covering the windows, revealing, and so that you could see through them. And so then I started to think along those lines, and well, what if I got curtains and you could see through them, and they could, and then what about if I, you know, made a stage, in theory, really taking a stage out, making it a stage to look into. And so that's how this series was born. Yeah, and revealing the landscape. So going back to Dara, it was really interesting to hear Dara in her last talk about death and water and the Wayback People, and how the soul lived. They believed that the soul lived in three places: the pupil, the reflection in the water, and in their shadow. And the idea of the pupil being a portal, because there's a lot of crossover with concepts in this work and what she was talking about in her practice, and the work that she made on the residency. And I actually made this picture on the morning that I found out there's a well-known photo dealer, Bonnie Benrubi, and I was working with her at the time, and she passed away after a long fight with cancer. And I got news that she passed away that day, that morning, and I went out and made this picture, and it was a very overcast day. There was hardly any wind, and I hung these curtains. It's literally just on the side of the road, and then the wind just picked up the fabric, and they just seemed to just float very gently. And this was a picture that I made for her, and I really enjoy looking at this picture. You've got the lilies there, and it's
I love that story. Yeah, and now I'm also thinking that I want you and Dara in conversation at some point.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. She's very interesting in her work. Okay, so I found this. I was going through things and I found this, and I thought that you guys would like to see it because it looks like a child's drawing, but it's me mapping out, working out with like stains and everything. It's my book. It's while I was down and working out, because I shoot every film, so I can't go back through and go, well, I've done that one, I know that one, I like that one, I don't like, I better redo. I don't see anything until I process the film.
Yeah,
so
you broke up a little bit in the beginning, so I just want to make sure that this is your sketchbook, not childlike at all, by the way. And and is this
my sketchbook.
These are the drawings of you setting up how you want to do the frame with
yeah, they were just, how variations of form, how many shapes can you make with the square, because all of them are square. I like working in the square. The camera format is square. It's a film camera, 6.6 Mamiya 6. And how many interesting shapes, because you don't want the same shape every time. Sometimes, sure, the curtains are picked up and they make their own organic form, but then other times there's no wind. And so what are you going to do to frame that form? So this is just a study of that. And then, every day I would make notes, I'd do little drawings just to remind myself of what I was doing. And I guess sort of like champion myself, encourage myself, keep going, and making notes, technical notes, which I think is always a really good thing to do, because you always think you're going to remember and then you don't, and how things work together. So like the weather conditions, the landscape, and like technical camera stuff. Yeah. So this is an earlier picture too, and black. It's quite a heavy color, but then you're playing with the light as well, and that this is at sunset, and it becomes something else. I should say that I've bought all of the fabrics, all of the curtains that I use in these shots wherever I'm making the pictures. I buy in the charity shops in the area where I'm making the pictures. So all of these pieces of fabric have been in people's homes, and so they have a social, they have a history embedded in the fabric, and this idea of the portal again. I think everyone has windows. Most people have some kind of window covering, and it's really been interesting. It's such a simple tool, but it's really helps the eye and the brain and the viewer connect with the landscape beyond, and helps position you in the landscape. And Dara was talking about, I think she was talking about how artists are like camels. And you have to survive on very little water as a camel, but as an artist you often have to survive on very little, in terms of encouragement, in terms of means, for long periods of time. And so then you get treats like the Everglades, where you feel you have such a good drink. And I would say to that is that it's really such a pleasure for me to make this work, but then also to be able to share it with others so that others can drink. And I think that's the gift of being an artist, and that's the gift of such programs as these in the national parks, because this landscape is so pristine and it's so important. I'm very lucky to have been given the opportunity to make the work in it. So
I love that.
I love it too. And it was a really hard, I was thinking about it last night, and it was actually a really hard picture to make, because I had to get the stands right in there. I mean, with all of these pictures, I don't Photoshop things out. They're shot with film, and then they're, a little bit of post-production, sure, but what you see is what you get when I've shot it. I want you to see the curtain rail, and I want you can actually see the stands in there. But in terms of actually getting the stands into that, this was quite close to the road, but still, the Everglades has a lot of poisonous snakes. There's 4 poisonous snakes, and apparently they like to lie out in the sun on the side of the road. So when I was getting all the gear, I'd always stomp around just to make sure that there weren't any snakes. And this, if I was a snake, this might be an area that I might hang out in. So yeah, I love the picture.
Dedication, Becky. You're like, poisonous snakes. I'm still gonna do it. Oh, hang on, Becky, I want you to go back to that picture, because when we were having a conversation earlier this week, you told me, I don't know if you want to share it with the group, what this image.
You're going to have to share it with the group now if you want to ask me.
I think you should, because we were looking at the images and you told me that you'd found this being used on the internet without your permission.
Yeah, without my permission. It's COVID times. And they're talking, a lot of people are, you know, self-care, like we can't go to the salons or, and things are getting a bit overgrown. So one site had posted this. They've actually since taken it down because I've threatened them. But they used this image to embrace the bush, which it's funny, but it's also not funny. And I'm not laughing now. So yeah.
It's a funny line. It's not
many
funny.
associations.
Yes, we never endorse anybody misappropriating any artist's work ever. But I just thought that would be an interesting fact to share with you.
So this one was made inside one of the cypress domes. There's 9 distinct habitats in the Everglades. And I tried to make pictures, successful pictures, in all of the 9 habitats. And this one, as I said, is inside a cypress dome. So for a good couple of weeks, I was driving along that route and looking at this flat landscape and then seeing these tiny little hills, tree hills. And I thought that they were concave. I thought that they were mounds. And it wasn't until a few weeks in that I found out that actually they were convex, but actually they're concave, sorry. So what happens is with the limestone substrate, the roots of the trees bore in, forgive me if I'm wrong on this, I think I'm right. So the roots bore in and create cracks, and so the water comes in, and so you get these circular solution holes, which are filled with water, and it's a complete little ecosystem in there. So in the center of the domes, you have the tallest trees, and then around the edges are the shorter trees. But you walk into these, obviously, like the water's black, you can't see how deep areas are. Apparently there are alligators in there. When I was in there, there were orchids and there was an owl and butterflies. It's like walking into Lord of the Rings or something. It's amazing. You lose all perspective you're bearing because there's trees all around. Yeah, it's called slough slogging. And so this is a team of people going in with their sticks. Everyone has to have sticks, I guess, so that they don't fall over it. You know, it's quite a challenge going in with the gear because my assistant, I don't always have an assistant, but I had an assistant for a lot of the residency, and they were holding up the pole. It's hard, like there's no like solid land that you can stand on in there. So, you know, it's a bit challenging, but I really like this picture. It's a very beautiful place to be. We were there at sunrise. There was a lot of soft pink, and yeah, I'd really like to go back and make some more work in those.
Well, you will be coming back.
Okay, so this is another one that's people have really enjoyed, and this was made out on the grasslands in the Everglades, and it was actually made on an airboat. I was standing on an airboat, and the assistant again was just holding the pole, and the curtains were going crazy. You know, it's quite hard when the curtains are moving that quickly because you don't really know if your reactions are quick enough to get the form that you're seeing because they're moving. Obviously, it depends on wind speed, but yeah. So I enjoyed that. And then this is another, I'm just going to go through a few pictures. I won't go through the whole series, but this is pine rockland habitat. Mm-hmm. And this one, see the little bumps at the back? That's the domes, that's the depressions. And this piece, I really enjoy this piece too. I had in my mind that I wanted to have like this surrealist aspect to some of the pictures, and have tried to get a curtain that was, make it freestand, almost like it was floating. I like the surrealist works. And, you know, like I said, you can see the tripod in the foreground there, the stand. Like, I don't want to hide things, but, you know, at first glance, it looks like it's floating.
I think when I first saw that, I was kind of like, oh, you know, because we're so in the age of just like photoshopping, and
I know, and a lot of people do think that they are photoshopped. Obviously, you know, from this you can see when you look closely they're not. But yeah,
I love this one. So
yeah, it's really, really nice. I'm a bit biased though. But I really
work, Becky, it's good.
I really enjoy that one. I really like it. Yeah, and then this one was made on the back of a truck. You know, set up on the back of the truck. We're driving around. You know, you're in the car a lot looking.
I love this one especially because that is
you got it.
that hangs in our home. And I always like to say this was this came to us before my position here.
Yeah, it's funny how
So,
things work out. It's true. Yeah.
yeah, it is. And so we were just like looking at it and loving it, and now it's just has a whole new dimension to
Yeah.
it. But yeah, I love it so much.
So that's the end of the Everglades work. So after the Everglades pictures, I wanted to keep making these things, and I wanted to try a completely different environment, a completely different topography. Something that the Everglades are lush and wet and and rich and green, and I wanted to go to a place that was quite ethereal, heavenly, referencing the soulful experience again of the landscape. And so I thought I wanted something white. I didn't want to go to the salt flats in Bolivia, that was too far. And I thought, well, why don't I mean, all of these pictures have been made in America anyway, but I thought, why don't I go to the salt flats in Utah? And I hadn't really been out west. And so I went to the salt flats. I made a lot of work in a short period of time, got a lot of curtains. And yeah, I think it was a long weekend that I made these pictures. So I don't do many diptychs. That's the different kind of, technical challenge, I guess. But this one came out super nice. And, it's interesting how the fabrics then start to speak to the landscape in terms of simply of palette. And I also find that, geographically, different areas, there's different aesthetics in different areas. So you get different types of fabrics. That's kind of interesting too.
Yeah, we actually have a question that relates to this from Molly Murphy. She says, how do you see the curtains, as the windows to the person or as a domestic reference?
How do I see them?
Mm-hmm.
As a domestic reference.
Yeah, she's asking as the windows to the person or as a domestic reference. I guess she's asking, are they more tied to the person or more tied to
the
general
person viewing it, or the person who had the fabric, or me? I mean, I guess all three, right?
Yeah, it's however you talked about like how you pick them up in different places and they're being indicative of those kind of like landscapes. So I wondered whether you talked about, and maybe this is what Molly's saying, about whether they are just about a domestic reference in general, or whether you see more of a personal tie to like individual homes, maybe.
I mean, domestic, that's one and the same. I guess, you could go back to like the eyes are the windows to the soul, that this whole concept, it's really the concept of portal. Yes, a domestic experience. Yes, I think we're becoming more and more distant from experiencing the landscape. And I think subconsciously this just is a gateway. And also then going into actually the earth is our home. We come from the earth. I truly believe that we are all light beings. We are all one and the same, so I guess it could be mirrored into that. Yeah.
Love that. I know, I'm like, we are the earth. We are one. I love that. I'm fully on board. I believe it too.
I do mean that, all jokes aside. That's what I'm trying to convey, this beauty of the sublime, like the great, American painters of the sublime landscape, all those, decades ago. That's what this is as well.
Well, and especially now, when you think about, so many people have been at home and quarantined for so long, not being able to have access to just space, to nature. And I was thinking, like, your work has brought me so much joy because you've brought the outdoors in for me. So I believe in the power of that.
Because the pictures I got, a series of these were just in the New Yorker photo feed, and people were saying the same. And the editors were saying that, they've been looking out their windows, but they don't have these views. And so there's this, they're connected, but connect this to something, something deeper. And it's something that is our right, all of our rights, to go back to that place, going back to the self.
Yeah. 100%. Okay, show us
Yeah,
more.
onwards. So yeah, so this was very nearby to where I made this picture. This is on the way to here, and this is the salt flats. And this is what I had in mind, and it definitely hit the spot, you know, that ethereal, dreamy, just experience of heaven, I guess.
Actually, another question is, do you think of climate change as you
Yeah,
make?
of course, of course, of course. You know, like we're talking about the Everglades. I was looking at maps quite recently. The Everglades is going to be the Everglades won't be anymore if it continues. You know, with the, I mean, I'm sure that, you know, the pop people will have the exact stats, but yeah, of course I'm thinking about that and sharing, you know, experience. So that's what I mean. Like we are just becoming ever more, we look at everything through screens. You know, we take our screens out there. We're always distracted. It's difficult for us just to sit, just to be. And, you know, when I'm making these pictures, I'm out in these landscapes. I'm living these landscapes for days, for hours. Like, and, you know, certainly with the, I guess the curtains are quicker, but I'm fully immersing myself in the landscape that I'm working in. The line stuff we'll look at later is longer. But,
yeah, and I think that's what you're saying. It's like you're connecting those who aren't able to go outside, or who are attached to the screens, or who cannot get to the Everglades. You're making that connection with them, and hopefully making you know, an emotive connection for them that either makes them want to be outside, to care more for the outdoors. Yeah, no, I believe I'm with you. Come on, show us some more work before I'm going to go down a rabbit's hole.
Okay. So this I found the other day, and I wanted to share it because it leads into this picture. This was the picture that I made at that spot, and this was a really important moment for me too, because I'd never been out west and experienced the vastness of the landscape that is out west in America. You don't get this kind of, it's beautiful landscape in the UK, so lush, so glorious, but not this, it's different. And so I remember at this point just standing there and looking out over it and thinking, this is what they mean when they say God's country. Whether you believe in a God or not, you know, just like this, like it just takes your breath away, the majesty of it. So I guess that's what I try to convey, and that's in my pictures, and that's another picture of me on the.
And we have another question: is like, how do you match the curtains with the landscape? Do you?
It's very quick. It's an immediate thing. I'm an iron lady. I'm not a bag lady. I'm an ironing lady, like a manic ironer the night before, and ironing out a selection of curtains, and then they're laid out on the floor so that they don't crease, and then they're laid out very carefully in the back of the truck or whatever I have so that they don't crease, and then they're ready to go for the shoot. And I just, you know, I've got them stacked up, and I just flip through them and just see what I would like to put up against that landscape. You know, and I try to, more often than not, I rarely use the same pair of curtains twice. I'll only use it once. So it's like, you know, if I've got some favorites in there, it's just like, is this the landscape for this fabric? You know, kind of thing. Like this, you know, sometimes you get these things, and I'm like, I don't know, this is Harry Potter, but actually this I love this picture. It worked really well, but just on its own on the floor, Harry Potter, it didn't do it for me at first, but this is, I enjoy looking at this. So this is the salt flats too. This is the night before, it was loaded up with water, and then the next morning it completely disappears. So I don't know if it sinks in or if it evaporates, but yeah. And then that's on the way to the salt flats.
I have another question that I wanted to ask you as well. From an anonymous person who says, your work is incredible, all caps, Becky, just incredible. Do you ever shoot man-made environments, cityscapes, manufactured spaces, places, etc.? And if so, do you consider the natural elements therein?
I mean, I'm actually made pictures up on the roof up here looking at the landscape. Yeah, you know, it worked out quite well. It might be something that I do in the future. It might be something that I have to do in the future if I can't travel with all of this COVID restriction. And I made a portrait for the New Yorker last week, I think it was. It's in this next week's issue, using the curtains against, you know, an urban backdrop. So yes, but it's really the work, this series, yes, it's about portals, and yes, those portals could be urban or other, but it's really about the experience of the pristine environment of the you know, that kind of landscape. That's what I'm interested in doing. Yeah. Can I keep going?
Yes, please.
Sure.
I'm drinking this up, Rebecca.
I thought you were going to say I'm drinking. Okay, so sorry. So that's the Marjorie's World Series led into Through Looking. I moved from working with fabrics to working with a more linear construct, but again using a window object, Venetian blinds. So these were made upstate around one lake in Woodstock. Woodstock is somewhere that I keep going back to and is very special to me. And what I started to do now was to incorporate painting into my practice, into the work. So I would hang the Venetian blinds up on stands like with the curtains, but then spray paint. So paint on plein air in response to the landscape. And so I just thought it was interesting to put, these are all individual works. I don't do them in grid like this, but I thought that it was interesting to see them quickly as an overview, just to get a sense of how, you know, with the same landscape, I've mixed it up because it doesn't, you know, the light changes, the days change, I work throughout the season. So everything's constantly evolving. And you can see this was some of the blind works that I made on the Joshua Tree residency. So you can see, you know, how I'm responding with a completely different palette because it's a completely different topography that I'm working with. So I'll just go through some of those frames larger, just so that you can really experience, because the eye moves around very differently in these. I really enjoy working with the grid. It really imparts a very democratic character to the scene, to the landscape, to the surface area. And I'm looking at the edges. When I studied as a painter, one of the tutors was always going on about, be mindful of the edges, think about the edges. And so that's something that really, I think, has stuck with me and is very evident here. In these pictures.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, I'm working digitally. All of the blind pictures are made digitally, and I'm using flash and ambient light. So with the Marjorie's World, I shot all film, and it was all natural light, never any flash. So it's a different kind of working too. And I also want to say that I keep going back to this lake, and I found out not too long ago that this lake is, you feel the energy in places, and this is a very special, very strong feeling, energetically strong place. And apparently this is where the American Indian women would go and sing their histories to one another. And I didn't know that for a long time, and I always wondered why, you know, yes, it's beautiful, but there's something else. And I think that there's energies that sit in landscapes, and this is...
Yeah, and I agree. I've been there, and I've been there with you. It's there's weight in its beauty.
Mm-hmm. This now is a reservoir, but you know, its origins are, you know, it's still a lake for all intents and purposes. So I'll just go through some of these. This, you know, you can see how different the light is, and you know, I'm interested very much in, you know, the optical effect of looking through, as I've said, but, you know, optical art, some trippy, you know, Bridget Riley, that kind of, and what's interesting about this picture, and something that I want to do more work on, is that the play of the shadow, it's so harsh, it's hard to look through, you want to look through it, it sort of pushes you away a bit, it looks flat, it's interesting how the light is kicking in on this. And then quite different here, this is at sunset, and you can see this is literally, I think, maybe half an hour apart as the sun was going down. So I'm really interested in, you know, the biological rhythms, like the charting, the transitions, like even something like, you know, Monet's haystacks, you know, and how that one object looked differently throughout the day. You know, that's, you know, I'm thinking about all of these things. And here, you know, you can see how the sky is actually reflected in the gold. So it turns blue on some of the slats. And then, you know, spatial, the ratios as well, like the different sizes of all of these things are coming into play in the sense of form. Yeah. So this again is the lake. And it's at a different season. And you can see that area that you're looking at there is really the area that I've made all of the pictures on. So I don't travel around the lake even. It's really interesting. I don't know how many meters across, but not many. And I'm using 2 layers there. It's a scrim. So this is just to show you a setup of one of the blinds. Yeah. And so in 2017, I started to work sequentially. Instead of having one blind that was, you know, that I painted and that was the shot, I started to break them down and make sequences of images. And you know, like if you look along the bottom line there, you can see the hill repeated. It kind of looks like a heartbeat. You know, it's like the life force, like, you know, there's lots of things that you can look into this. And this whole experience of like looking through looking, that's, you know, where the title of the work, the series, you know, and I was thinking about artists like Lucio Fontana in the slashes and spatial experience. And also, you know, the cycle of life, how we start whole and it just go back into the earth until there is nothing. And looking through the landscape with this gauze, you know, it speaks to, I guess, the salt flat imagery, the dreamy, the ethereal again.
Yeah, I love the layers to it, and I love the fact that I feel like it's like you're diminishing, you're deconstructing these blinds, but like you said, there's this constant heartbeat going through the landscape.
Yeah, and you never know, you know, you never know how it's going to go. You know, there's a bit of pressure. You can get too wrapped up by, and it's a good life experience. It's all very much a meditation on the self, on myself. You know, first when I started doing these, I'd be quite happy to cut, and then everything got a bit precious, and you know, I had to take a step back and just, you know, it's okay if it doesn't work out. That's life. Sometimes this is all practice. It's my practice. And so, yeah, it teaches me, it informs me, which is one of the joys. So yeah, I really enjoy John O'Donoghue. He's since passed, but he was an Irish priest, writer, philosopher, and he wrote a lot about notions of beauty and the landscape. And there's a really lovely quote that I wanted to read now. It says, "Nature coaxes us deeper inwards, teaches us to rest in the serenity of our elemental nature. When we go out among nature, clay is returning to clay. We are returning to participate in the stillness of the earth which first dreamed us." And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And I guess I'm thinking about these things when I'm out there standing, because I, you know, like these pictures, they can be made quite quickly, but I'm standing there waiting and looking at the light and observing for like really long stretches of time. So it's very much a meditation, the whole process.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. We have a question from our dear friend Megan Skidmore. Hello. She says, where are you dying to travel to photograph, especially during this time of little to no travel? That's a great question.
I really want to go to Hawaii, where there's lots of really big lush leaves, because I've got a really nice new custom-made blind that I'm dying to use. And I really want to go. I've been wanting to go to White Sands for a really long period of time. You know, like the salt flats, but different. So I really want to go and make some work there. Really want to go down to Florida and make some work down there.
You will.
Upstate. Yeah, they're the places that come to mind.
That's great. Show us more, because we're on a countdown.
Okay, don't worry. We haven't got much more to do. So in 2020 Agnes Martin had a huge show at the Guggenheim, and I went to see that show, and it was such a beautiful experience. And so I think these pictures were really informed by the experience of that Agnes Martin show, in terms of completely paring down the color, you know, it being white on white. this is one of that sequence, and you can see I put it in so that you can see, like, I'm using flash and it's hitting the fabric, and you've got those shadows, and that's conscious. And at the top there, you can see the fabric sagged a bit and you can see through. So there's all these things, you know, very subtle things, shifts that I'm definitely going to be making some more white on white work. Yeah. And this leads into sun breathing, which is the most recent body of work. All of these series are ongoing. I'm not doing the Marjorie's World so much anymore, but I am still making the work. Through looking, I'm still really into, you know, I'm in the deep of, thick of, and then sun breathing, I'm really in the thick of too. Sun breathing is a bit different because I really like, you'll see here, I need to have the ferns. I'm really into ferns. And I also really want to do this with, you know, the large tropicals, you know, like the cheese plant leaves and things like that. I think that would be really interesting. So sun breathing, you know, my work is about observing the biological rhythms in the environment. And this sun breathing references a recently discovered phenomenon induced by the sun, whereby there's a rhythmic expansion and contraction of the Earth's atmosphere on a 9-day cycle. The breathing responds to the changes in the sun's magnetic fields as it completes rotations once every 27 days. So in this series, I moved from painting on plein air, sure, onto the props, but then I moved on to painting literally onto the landscape itself. So it was a lot of fun, is a lot of fun. I get really messy and use a lot of paint, but I should say that all of this paint is chalk spray. So it washes away and it blows away.
No ferns were harmed making this work, right? No ferns were harmed making this work, right?
No ferns were harmed making this work, that's true. Yeah. So with these, that I started making the images in pairs, so you can see you've got this, and then I took it's the same, exactly the same scene, but it looks so different, and so it's like this binary element. And so I started thinking about, you know, contraction, expansion, inhale, exhale, very much like breathing, which then goes into the title of sun breathing again. So with I started out using the primary red, blue, yellow to make these pictures. Yeah,
I love these, and
that's it. I think that's, oh, this one, ta-da! This one I made on the Stony residency. So here I'm actually, this is a little bit different again because I'm spraying the blind in a different color, and you know the others, like, so red, blue, yellow, and putting those onto the landscape. But this is something optical again. I guess it's a bit of blending of the through looking. Yes,
I love these, and again, I feel so lucky that I've been able to go down like on our property and see blue ferns and blinds around, which has been incredible. I should ask if anybody's got any questions they want to pop into the Q&A quick before we go. But Rebecca, this is like incredible, and I should let everybody know, not that it's been officially announced yet, but that you will be releasing AIRIE's first ever edition. I'm really excited about that. We're going to be releasing an edition in October, and we're also going to be having an exhibition at the Nest Gallery in the Everglades, and you will definitely be returning, hopefully in January. So I'm just so happy that it's been incredible for me to see and to hear you talk about how much the residency at AIRIE has informed your practice and still like lives, you know, with you. And I feel like we're all drinking. You're hydrating everybody still, you know, watching and I love the fact that it's continuing, and then you'll get to return and then hopefully like spread the love through the editions. Oh, we have another question. Oh, where are you based normally? And have you shot in your home area? And when did these start for you? So
yeah, I'm based in Brooklyn, in Greenpoint in Brooklyn. Yeah, you know, as I said, I've made pictures on the roof. I have made some pictures around here. This is kind of the base, but it's, you know, it's good to travel. to a place to make work, I find, because you're not so used to it that you don't see it. It's helpful to go to a new place. You see it, with really bright eyes. And so, I like to travel to make work, because it takes you out of your everyday day to day as well. And it's a different kind of immersion. So, yeah.
And is there one special place in the Everglades that you'd like to return to, or?
Well, I'd like to make some more pictures inside the cypress domes. And I guess I would just like to be in a place I guess I'd like to be in a place where there's a lot of really juicy foliage. I guess so I'm saying like more close-up areas. I'd also really like to go and see some of the burns. I know that that's something that Dara's been doing. It's really interesting. So yeah, but I mean, who knows? I'm a great believer in, things present themselves as they should when they are supposed to. So who knows what's actually going to manifest and come into my path. I don't know.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I love that. Oh, and I just have one other question. If you could have dinner or a coffee or a cocktail with Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, what would you ask her?
What would I ask her? Oh my goodness me.
Sorry, that was a random one. I just threw it.
Do you have time for another, or would you like a gin and tonic, not a cup of tea? Rock on, sister. Yeah.
And on that note, I think that's the perfect way to end on a G&T and a rock on, sister. Rebecca, thank you so much.
And thank you everyone for making it to the end and for coming to listen. It's been a pleasure.
Magic. And we'll send everybody an email about and connect you with Rebecca's work and keep you updated about the edition. And again, Rebecca, thank you for being so generous. This was really, truly wonderful. Thank you. Okay, we say bye now.